Hi, I'm Dianna DiNoble, and my company is Starkers Corsetry. I do things like costuming and corsets, and I see some familiar faces here that I've worked with before. So if you've worked with corset dresses, you've probably worked with some of my designs. So I'm going to start out with a demonstration with Maddie here. She's my amazing model for today. So this is, again, one of the outfits. Oop, I'm so sorry. Let's put you, oh, hey, thank you. All right, so she's wearing one of my designs that I've created, and this is, the perfect time to talk about costuming and design in photography. So what I like to do, especially for costuming and photography, is work with costumes that have a lot of contrast, a lot of color, a lot of texture, and I tend to do a lot of darker designs just because that's what I like to do. And this one here has, it's made out of a silk chiffon, so what we love for photography is little floating moments like that, and be able to either have somebody off camera like me just kind of throw it and run, or would it be okay if you just demonstrated? The model can just do like a 1, 2, 3 and like that. So we like to have a little bit of texture to do that sort of thing with. So if you want to organize some costuming that has maybe different layers to it, different textures, things for the model to kind of interact with. But what we don't want to see is the moment like a model just holding the dress out like this, because that doesn't really give much of a story to your ultimate composition, right? So I'm going to bring you back up in another moment to talk about some other stuff. So let me circle back. I've been a clothing designer and corset maker for 30 years now, and I've been making costumes and things like that, dresses for movies. Most recently, a lot of work with Canada's Drag Race, Canada versus the World, One Queen, Five Queers, and I guess in another month, there's a whole other thing that's going to be happening that I can't tell you about right now, but it's going to be very exciting and has to do with a lot of costuming and drag and that sort of thing. So drag is something that I work with mostly right now, especially since the pandemic. And I find that working with drag design and drag costumes and the photography of drag designs and drag costumes can be really interesting to see how that person can transform in front of the camera depending on the rapport that they have with the photographer. Now, if you've met a drag performer, they can go from just, their daytime look, sweatpants, t-shirt, into this incredible drag creature, and just the way that they're able to interact with the camera can give really, really beautiful images. Also, this creation here with Elena. Now, I work a lot with Elena, and I think some of you have worked with Elena as well. I love working with Elena because she's trained as a dancer, and when she's in front of the camera, she knows how her body moves, how her body poses, the lines that ultimately she would like to create as the subject of the photograph. She needs no direction at all, really. So, when working with somebody who's, a dancer or an athlete, they know kind of how to pose for their images. This one here, I really love the idea of dressing her like Lady Tremaine from Cinderella, because she looks exactly like Cate Blanchett. I mean, look at her. So this was really fun. We just did this shot out in her backyard. She has this entire forest in her backyard, so this was pretty fun. Obviously, she's got a really great expression, really great movement, and what the costume can bring to that is just another layer of drama and interest and depth to the photograph. Now, these are all not in any order whatsoever, and also I have raging ADHD, and I'm going to be like circling around topics, so if anybody needs to just slow me down and stop and ask a question, please feel free. I'm happy to answer any questions along the way, and I encourage it. So what do we got next? It's a surprise for all of us. Okay, this is another great example here of how a costume or clothing can really be a great focal point to a composition of a photograph. Now this one here, in the spring, we managed to sneak out during the pandemic and grab this beautiful cherry blossom. And I mean, trying to find, I'm sure you all know, trying to find a beautiful place to shoot cherry blossoms in the spring is, it can lead you from anywhere to frustration to an actual fine. So this one we were really lucky with. And this is Jill. She's wearing, again, the silk I love working with. The silk, it can flow and just create shapes that no other fabric can. And of course, with this one here, just like with Maddie showed you, you can throw a piece of it and it can kind of just do its own thing. It can be its own creature that you interact with in the photo. And I picked this color of silk because I wanted to shoot it in the spring with the cherry blossoms. And also, the crown that I created for her as well. Now, anybody can do this sort of crown, and any photographer could make this sort of crown. Ultimately, it's just like, it's chopsticks that I got from sushi takeout over the pandemic, which there were lots of. So I just literally glued chopsticks to a headband, spray painted it gold, grabbed some flowers from Michael's, and she looks like an absolute fairy queen here. So, but you know, as you can see, like, she would be stunning wearing pretty much anything, but the costume just elevates it and turns it into an entirely different mood, an entirely different feel and balance to the photo as well. What's next? Aha, there we go. And I'm sure most of you have shot at this location before. This is the Bluffs. This is, oh my goodness, and it's just escaped me. Guild Park, thank you, that's it. And this is Miles, who some of you may have worked with before as well. And he's wearing a corset that I made, a shirt from Nui Clothing Atelier, and his own pants. So Miles is another one of these amazing people who you just put them in front of a camera and can just create the most beautiful shapes and images and composition. And honestly, you put Miles in any photo and everybody's going to be talking about it because they're so amazing. Now, when you work with a photographer or with a model like Elena or like Miles, who you start shooting, they instantly start moving, they instantly start posing, they instantly start making lines and shapes and angles and triangles with their body, and they know how to move. They usually require not very much micromanagement. So you just kind of get the best of what they know the shapes of their body and their costume can create. And sometimes, you know, some photographers can get a little micromanagey with that as well. And it ends up creating less of a beautiful image. I mean, if you want to ask them, hey, would it be okay if you know, maybe tried this or maybe interacted with the scenery or something? Usually asking their permission of, hey, could you do this, would go a long way, and I want to get into models and consent in a little bit too. So this is also a great example of a collaboration with another designer. Now, I think this was not during the pandemic. So Miles always does their own hair anyway and requires very little makeup, so they always come prepared. And especially in a place like Guild Park where there's really nowhere to change because you're outside. And if you're gonna get changed, it's gonna be in a car, or if you're lucky and have a great big giant crinoline, which I usually do, they just get dressed under the crinoline. It's like a little tent if you happen to have a crinoline with you. They're amazing. So the shirt is done by Nui Clothing Atelier, and we were just lucky enough to have Miles own that shirt anyway, and it just went with this outfit so beautifully. But the great part is we get a collaboration with Edwin the photographer and Miles the model and Nui Clothing Atelier for the shirt and my corset. And we all get to share those around, and it works out fantastic because, you know, the more eyes on the photo, the more people see it, and the more people can enjoy it, the more people can talk about it and share it. And the cool part too is that when you get a collaboration, everybody kind of has a different perspective as well, right? You get, in some cases, the stylist who may be collaborating with the designer or taking elements of things that the designer has brought to the photo shoot, because stylists have an amazing eye for putting really cool pieces together in an interesting way. And you know, they put their expertise in. The makeup artist puts their expertise in. Hairdresser, model, photographer. If the lighting person is different, it can be jewelry makers, a team of like 10 different collaborators working together to create one image that might be shown on social media, might be shown on an ad somewhere, right? But if it's a lot of times I've worked with just creative collaborations like this, where everyone's just volunteering their talents. Everyone looks at the final images with completely different eyes. The photographer's looking at it as a whole composition, how the balance of everything is, how the light is. The model is looking at how their body is angled and posed. The makeup artist is looking, is that the right angle for the highlight? Is that, oh my God, there's like a little bit of lipstick over there. I hope they Photoshop that out later. This sort of thing. The clothing designer is looking at, okay, is somebody putting their hands on their waist? And if you've worked with me, you know that I give all my models the don't put the hands on your waist lecture, which I'll tell you about in a minute as well. So everybody looks at it with a completely different set of eyes, and that's what can make a collaboration really fun, because you end up with a piece that is well balanced by everybody. So when the public is looking at that photo, whether it's through Instagram or an ad or something, everybody can kind of see the best of all of those worlds coming together if it's a good collaboration. Now, sometimes one of those collaborators can kind of veto other people and end up putting a photo out that, maybe the model is not quite happy with how their face looks or how an angle is, and, it's not going to get shared around quite as much because that model might not feel like they look their best, or they might, the makeup artist might feel like, oh shoot, this whole thing was smudged over here. I can't show that in my portfolio. So if you're working as a collaborative team, especially if it's just a creative collaboration and nobody's really putting in money or anything like that, it's a great idea to make sure that all people who've been involved in the project approve of the final image, or even like approve of the final 5 images, because that way more people are going to enjoy it if everyone's kind of checked it off as, yeah, I love this image, I love this image. Okay, what do we got next? Okay, this is another one of Miles at Guild Park, and how, again, costuming can really turn it into an entire mood. This, of course, is such a gorgeous place to photograph anyway. Like, you could photograph anything there. You could just photograph the buildings there, and it's just absolutely stunning. And the shape of the costume and the corset, I really wanted to pair with the setting, because it was just this beautiful old stonework and columns and everything. And I love the idea of this custom-made corset that I made for Miles, and they brought this other shirt from Nui Clothing Atelier. So again, it was a collaboration of the shirt designer, the corset maker, I did the skirt, Edwin did the photo, and Guild Park, who we tagged as well. But the costume really, really makes this. Now, Miles, of course, does the poses effortlessly. They've got such a great intuition with how to move and how to, move with the camera. But just the dramatic skirt with this, I think, is what I got the most comments on. So when I posted this to my Instagram and my TikTok as well, Starkers Corsets on both of those if you want to follow me. Most people were really impacted by just the dramatic skirt. And there's a video of Miles walking to the end of the stage there and just doing this beautiful spin, and just the skirt flowing up. And it's just such an amazing moment just to see the costume, Miles interacting with the costume interacting with the scenery, and how that all came together in this beautiful photo series, this beautiful moment. And again, the top was Nui Clothing Atelier. They're incredible. Okay, and this one here, I love this one. This is a picture of my son when he was, I think, about 6 or 5 years old. And we went to a friend of mine, she's a photographer as well, and she had this big basket of just costumes and stuff to put on. And I had both of my kids with me, and my son found these ears and these crazy monster hands. And I mean, trying to photograph kids is, yes, that. It's like trying to photograph cats and you just end up with their butt in the camera. And it's like, no, this is not what we want. So the great way, if you have to photograph kids or even adults, for crying out loud, like who wouldn't want to have fun with, like, you know, big monster hands in a photo? It's going to transform your subject to put on crazy ears and interact with crazy hands or something like that. If you put a hat on somebody, it can turn that subject, that person, into, like, it can just have them tap into something really cool in front of the camera, and you get to capture that moment, which is really unique. I mean, he was miserable that day. Like, he was just a pain in the ass that day. And as soon as he saw those monster hands, he was just enthralled, and it was hard to get them off of him because he just loved them so much, and these ears, and we just got to capture this adorable moment. I mean, he's a cute kid, but he was a very serious child. So anyway, I love, again, just how costuming can transform somebody. And, you know, even watching Maddie get this, you know, into this beautiful outfit today, just going from, you know, your regular pants, shirt, ponytail, into, you know, evil fairy princess, it just can help your model become this other creature and just, you know, move differently, hold themselves differently, just have different angles to the shape of their face, right? If you feel good wearing what you're wearing, even if it's something completely bananas that you've never worn before, if you feel like, this is really interesting, I feel like I can let go of my self-consciousness and leave that at the door because I'm wearing my armor today, right? I mean, on a regular basis, I don't wear this. I am at home in my full basement goblin mode, just sewing away, full of thread and pins in my shirt and stuff like that. But, you know, coming here today, I keep saying this is my work drag because it transforms how I feel in front of a room full of people. I'm still nervous and confused, and I feel like a deer in the headlights, but I at least feel like I can convey some things to you. So anyway, so you give somebody something that they're going to feel good wearing. They're going to be able to give you what you want as a photographer. They're going to be able to do some cool things if they feel like they're not quite as self-conscious, right? And this at least brought a smile to my son's face, so we, you know, forever grateful for that. And this is another one of shoots with Phil at Spadina House. And I'm actually tucked behind this dress here and throwing the throwing the chiffon up into the air. So this was really beautiful. This is the 3rd floor of Spadina House, and it's just this gorgeous old room that just the light in there can be so interesting. And if you can have some sheer fabric, or even just go to a fabric store and invest in just like a cheap little bolt of tulle, and you can make some really interesting images with it. Like, you know, like this. I think this might have been it. I think we had some smoke, like a smoke machine this day, and I'm not sure, Phil, was this the day we set off the fire alarm? Yeah. But so that was a fun story too. So we had I think some of you may have been there as well. This was amazing. So this model is Alyssa, and I think this may have been one of the first photo shoots I had Alyssa in my outfits with. So I don't think I'd given her the talk about don't put your hands on your waist when you're wearing a corset in front of the camera. And I think she was feeling like a little, you can see the body language is a little bit closed off, a little bit self-conscious still. You know, I'm hiding behind her. She doesn't know what I'm doing back there. So, but it still turned out pretty cool. So big crinolines, big pieces of chiffon to throw around. Like, even if you go to the fabric stores, Queen and Spadina, get 5 yards of some sort of silk just to kind of throw around. You can get some beautiful, interesting textures in the light, in the windows, things like that. This was pretty cool. So the setting in itself is so gorgeous, and the angles and the way that the light hits the walls, which made this the perfect room for photos, because like just the room itself is an amazing photography subject, but then you put somebody in this amazing costume in that room interacting with the light behind them. It can really, bring some cool stuff to your photos. And there we have Jimbo. Like I said, I've been working a lot with drag artists, and this is Jimbo the drag clown. They were on season 1 of Canada's Drag Race, and this is another interesting location. I'm not sure where this is. I believe it's somewhere in BC, but it's this crazy old farmhouse. And I'd created this Marie Antoinette look for Jimbo. Now, I don't know how familiar some of you are with Jimbo's particular situation, but Jimbo has giant boobs, like this prosthetic thing that they wear just as their drag character. Jimbo as a regular person is very just calm and chill and just like a regular guy, but puts this all on and it transforms them, right? Turns them into this really zany, creative, avant-garde character, and is endlessly fun to take photos of. So this we found would be really fun to put the Marie Antoinette costume on them. And again, wig styling too. Like your hair people are so important. Your hair and makeup people are so important, because they can really turn just, a photo of a location into something really bananas and fun and really unique. So this outfit here is PVC black corset and panties and garter belt and hoop panniers and a tearaway bra that comes off and has little tassels on these giant boobs, and that's Jimbo. And this is Priyanka from the winner of Canada's Drag Race Season 1. This is a dress that I created for her to pass the crown to the next winner of Season 2. And this is kind of fun because I took pieces of the first dress that she wore when she took the crown, like when she won Canada's Drag Race the first season, and I put it into the dress, and it's kind of part of the side of the dress. And this is made with 4 different saris and a giant crinoline. And, you okay? All right. And we had some prosthetic arms for this as well. So this was one of the first times I worked with Priyanka, and she said that she wanted to have this really cool dress that represented her Indian heritage and Hindu heritage, and wanted to Photoshop some arms onto it after. And I said, well, what if, and hear me out, we make the arms and have them actually pop out when you're on stage like that? And she said, can we do that? I said, yes, of course we can. So I put her in touch with a prosthetic artist that I knew, and I rigged up a machine that, this robotic thing that raised the arms in the back. So she would flip a little switch on her hip, and the arms in the back would come up like that. And it was an amazing moment. And obviously, like this, having the things kind of in real life, as opposed to adding them in post after, can be really cool, because it just, you can also get a little bit of behind the scenes video to kind of go with your photo of, hey, here's how it moves, here's how it can, you can have something attached to the arms that holds it, that hands it off to somebody else. And another drag artist. There's been a lot of them since the pandemic. This is more of a showgirl aspect. We've got, sparkles, lots of rhinestones, lots of moving rhinestones. And of course, when you're photographing, as some of you may know, rhinestones, that can impact a lot of the lighting. How you want to bounce the light off of the stones. Do you want to, bring the stones out? Do you want them to kind of sink into the background a little bit? How do you want the sparkle to interact, and how do you want it to show on your photos. And lemon again. This was a photo for her lemon wheat beer that came out last summer, I think it was, and the photograph of that. Now the entire background, as you can see, was done in post, and it's just, it's a corset outfit, some, a silk skirt, and lighting of the hat was interesting. So I love a giant hat, and if any of you have seen my TikTok channel, Starkers Corsets, I wear this big giant hat in all of my videos. And every time I've tried to have anyone photograph a model in that hat, I get dirty looks, because nobody loves lighting a great big hat that comes out this far, because trying to get the light right when you've got this big hat is a big problem. So this hat, I think they made the hat a little bit smaller in post as well, because she was holding it out like that when she had the hat. So I think they had to make it a little smaller in post and curl it upwards quite a bit and have the face to the light. So hats can be really fun, and this image here made it onto the can of the beer because the impact of the hat was just super cool, and they, in post, were able to turn it into an entire lemon in the background. So trying to find interesting ways to light your model with a big hat can be really fun. Like at the end of it, I mean, it's a pain in the butt. Like it's not fun, but I think the image that you can get from it can be really, really cool and really unique, because nobody does it, and lighting is why, I'm sure. And here is Brooklyn Heights in a very different vibe than I tend to make for her for Canada's Drag Race. This was one of the outfits that she wore in One Queen, Five Queers. And this was the Canadian tuxedo, corset and skirt. So for this one, she wanted to look a little more casual, if you can call this casual. Some of the photos I'm going to show you of her coming up you can see why this is a casual look. But it can, and this is also a thing about posing while wearing a corset. Now, Ms. Brooklyn knows you don't put the hands on the waist. It's always down below. Keep the angles, show the curves. Every pose you see with Brooklyn, there's always triangles. And most models kind of know, okay, the triangles, you make the angles, you lengthen, you show the waist. But with a corset, if you end up working with any model who's wearing a corset, oftentimes they're going to want to put their hands right on their waist. And as you can see, I'm kind of hiding my waist. It's a little blocky right there. But if they end up going down just a little bit, or one of these angle situations, something like that, it just shows off the waist a little bit more, and it just kind of gives a little more of a relaxed image rather than somebody standing there like this, right? And this is Brooklyn again with all the angles. And lighting this one wasn't super fun either, because this was sort of, I don't know how they managed to get this color. It must have been just like a color adjusting afterwards, because this is exactly this type of color. You know that yellow and green crayon when you were a kid and like it looked green, but then you color it and it's yellow? It was this color. And photographing any shade of green tends to go a little weird, so. And this is what I mean about the hats. It can be a beautiful, beautiful image and a very dramatic. You can use that shadow to your advantage. You can use it to kind of hide some of the face. And this moment here, I think is one of my favorite runway photos that I've ever seen. Now, this was from Fashion Art Toronto, and this photographer managed to catch this moment. I don't know how, but the model had this, what's behind her is it's sort of a removable train. And I like kind of having layers and elements to work with in the photos. So as she came down the runway, she untied the train and sort of threw it behind her. And the photographer caught this moment where it was almost horizontal. And also just the angle of the face being hidden with the hat is just stunning. There's a couple more photos of that I'm going to get to in a second. These are not in any order whatsoever, so we're just going to bounce around a whole bunch. So this is, this is, oops, there it is. Yeah, I wanted to get to that now. So this is actually the beginning of that series with the train, and how I included these because I love the way that the photographer dealt with the hat angle, because I know that hats are terrible to work with, and the photographer managed to get that really, really well and still get her face, even though the lighting for Fashion Art Toronto was really bad that year. And there she is kind of untying it. And just, again, the angle with the hat was super cool. All right, let me get back to Bella over here. Again, costuming. So this is an Elizabethan look. And this was at, oh gosh, I can't remember what the studio was, but it was this cool little room with, yes, exactly. So there was different corners of this room that had neat little areas where you could just take photos and they would all look very different. And we've got this pomegranate here. So this Elizabethan moment can, you know, just a costume like that can really change an element of what it is you're trying to photograph. Like if we had somebody in a more contemporary looking outfit in this corner, it would still work, but it would be a very different vibe. Okay. Yeah. And this is the moment right after on this side here when she just twirled the train around after. So having other things like costuming and trains and hats, just having the model move them like that can add some really, really interesting shapes to the end composition. And this here, of course, this is Alyssa again, and this setting was gorgeous. This was this beautiful place again, and I love this couch so much. I want this couch for my house. But just this little fainting couch was so pretty, and we matched the outfit to this kind of little, you know, seat. So we could again have that piece of fabric that was being sort of thrown around, the light bouncing off of the metallic applique at the top, so it would kind of have this lighter to darker to blending into the furniture look. Okay, and there's Ms. Brooklyn again. And I did a screen cap of my Instagram here. So as you can see also, the posing is so important to give the ultimate shape, because here we've got a very, very tight corset, the hips are emphasized, and then it comes in and then back out again, and my shoe is untied. I'm just gonna keep it over there for now. So this sort of thing, when you get a model who knows how to pose, you can have some really beautiful stuff happen. And this is, oh, there we go. There we go. So this is Teresa, and she's in kind of, again, an 18th century sort of look. And I'm not sure who did the hair. She did the makeup. I think she does her own hair as well. She's a model in Paris, and I put this outfit together as sort of this beautiful sort of French look. And the costuming is everything here, from the headpiece to the necklace to the bracelet, corset, the shoulder drape, the bloomers, and the hip panniers. She also, I think, had some flowers or things like that. So things like accessories, flowers, anything to interact with can really bring out the model's personality. Now, Teresa's an incredible model to begin with. Again, somebody who can just do their own thing in front of the camera, and you just snap away at whatever's going on, because she knows how to interact with the shape, with the curves, with everything. This is a very, very old one. This is, again, yeah, 2006, there it is. Okay, I thought I had the date there somewhere. So the photographer had asked the Long Branch TTC driver if they could just snap a few pictures in front of the TTC. And I think it's kind of silly and ridiculous, but it's kind of fun being able to juxtapose, you know, this sort of Tudor style corset and this Victorian moment out in front of the TTC. Like, why not? And I think that's it for the photos. So if you will bear with me for just a moment. So, I wanted to talk about also working with models while you're, hold on just a sec, there we go, working with a model. So there's so many different types of models you could work with. There are just people you know just socially, like a friend or something that might just want to get into modeling, or you find that maybe they're just the way that they hold themselves or carry themselves might be a really interesting photography subject for you. There's also people who want to become professional models. There are agency models. There are people like Elena, who isn't an agency model but is a professional dancer. There's professional athletes who you can put in front of a camera. I think sometimes when you have, you know, maybe like a lesser experienced model, they might not know quite how to move and how to pose and might need a little more direction from the photographer, because they might not know what to do. Like if I'm in front of a camera, I am going to be an entire deer in the headlights. I'm not going to know what the hell to do, how to pose, how to do anything. It's just all going to fall out of my head. I'm going to look at the camera and panic. So if a photographer says to me, okay, just like, you know, move one foot out in front of the other, lift your chin, do a thing, like I appreciate that so much. But for somebody like Elena or an agency model, they might not quite so much, because they know their angles, they know what is the right way to move, the right way to interact with the camera. So I think an important thing to do is ask your model, do you need direction? They'll tell you. Like if somebody asked me, I would say, yes, please direct me. A lot of the times the model's gonna say no, and you gotta be okay with that, right? In fact, I've seen some photographers go right up to models and physically adjust them without permission. And I'm sure if we thought about that long enough, we would think, oh yeah, no, that's not okay. We can't do that. So if you see a thing on your model that is like, you know, a shirt hanging out funny, or you want to fix where their hand is, consent is super important. Being able to say to them, hey, is it okay if, you know, I just adjust this little thing right here? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yeah, of course, fix the thing. But if you just go up and start manhandling a model, they're not going to be comfortable in front of your camera anymore. Like, you're not necessarily, you're going to lose that rapport with the model. They might not look like it. They might just still be smiling and interacting okay, but the vibe's going to be off for that model, and you're not going to end up with the photo that you're going to want. The more you can help the model feel comfortable by way of asking permission, asking consent, the more relaxed your model's going to be, the safer your model's going to feel, and the more they're going to be able to let their self-consciousness go and just have fun with you as the photographer, have fun with the camera, and you're going to end up with some gorgeous images. Sometimes if it's, you know, an experienced model or an agency model, they're going to say, actually, no, I'm not comfortable with that, or I just want my hair like this, or I just, no. And you got to be okay with that too, right? Because models talk, designers talk, everyone gossips about everybody. And ultimately, like, if you want to have a good rapport with your model or with models in general, because you ask to work with a model, they're going to look you up and find out, hey, you worked with them last time. Were you comfortable with them? Every single model asks this to their model friends. And if they say no, they're going to make an excuse to not work with you. So the best way to have a good rapport with just your community in general, be respectful. I know that photographers and artists in general can be very neurodivergent people, like me, a whole heck ton of ADHD and a sprinkling of autism sometimes as well. And we can be very focused on what it is that we want to do and what it is that we want to create. And we can kind of forget for a moment that the person in front of the camera is an actual living human person, that they're there on their own time, whether they're being paid or volunteering, and they're not just like a loaf of bread in front of us that we can just, handle and move around and stuff. And I find the better images happen when the model feels like their time and personal space is respected and their opinions are respected, because they're not there just to look pretty. They're there to interact with you, interact with the camera, interact with the scenery, interact with the costumes. And the best photos come from subjects who can kind of almost forget that they're there and just get into their head and feel the moment and give you what it is that you'd like to see. I mean, as the observer, the camera, you can observe or you can manipulate. And if you want to get that photo of them doing a particular thing with their dress or with a hat or with a sofa or a tree, have that conversation ahead of time and then let that artist, that model, interpret it for you. And if you have other suggestions, ask, say, hey, you know, could you maybe grab that branch? Would it be okay if you did this? And then let that person do their art as the model, right? Other things, if you have a chance to have, if you do work with a designer for costuming, if you get a chance, have that designer or costumer or stylist on location with you. There is a photo that I should have included but didn't, and a stylist had called me one day and said, hey, could I borrow, it was actually that purple outfit that I had on Teresa earlier, that beautiful French model with the gorgeous hair and the purple background. And they said, we love that corset. Can we borrow that for this fashion shoot for a magazine? And I said, yeah, absolutely, that sounds great. I hadn't worked with a stylist before. I said to her, I gave her the whole corset lecture that I do for stylists, which is put it on right side up, which sounds like it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, sometimes they can be a little bit tricky, but let me just, okay. So let's going back to Teresa here. This corset here, so it's fairly simple to see which side's right up, yeah? We've got the draping necklace at the top, we've got the points at the bottom, we have shoulder straps. So I said, this is how it's supposed to look. Make sure it's right side up. I usually say that just joking around because who's gonna mess around with that, right? Anyway, I said, put it with outfits that it will look good with. I got the photograph back, and I think this is one of my top viewed videos on TikTok, Starkers Corsets, is it coming off upside down, and the model is doing this weird Frankenstein's monster pose, and this corset was not only upside down with the jewel hanging right over here and the shoulder straps hanging over her hips, but they put her with gray yoga pants and a red blouse that with the bows at the front. So it was a lot. So when you, if you have somebody who's lending you wardrobe, you know, listen to them when they say put it on the right way, right? If you have a chance to have the stylist or designer with you, they're gonna make sure that it looks its best so that your photo is gonna look its best. From what I understand, that upside down photo, or the upside down corset photo, the magazine only took a headshot of this much because the hair looked great, the makeup looked great, the model was trying her best to make this situation okay. You know, it didn't work out, and the ultimate photograph showed that. So if you have people who are collaborating, try to have them with you and just having them have a final pass over it, because if I was to say like, hey, that corset should be the right side up, the ultimate image would have been ever so much better. Now, I think I have probably talked your ear off for long enough. Does anybody have any questions about costuming, about styling for photos? I don't know if I can see anybody here, but I think I've probably covered every darn thing I could possibly. Yes?
You must have a video. I would love to see the arms and stuff on Priyanka. Do you have like a video on your laptop?
I do, but my laptop is not the one that's plugged in. But if you, there's an amazing moment, actually it's on Crave, if any of you have Crave, but if you go to season 2 of Canada's Drag Race, the finale episode has her coming out and surprising everybody with that moment. I wish I could show you, but having those wow moments, and having it kind of in real life as opposed to just kind of edited in post after can be very cool. Yeah, I wish I had that to show you. I'm so sorry. But if you go to, it's all over my Instagram, TikTok, everything, but also Crave TV, season 2 of Canada's Drag Race, the finale episode. Yeah. And I can't see anybody. If you have any other questions, just shout it out because I can't see. But I think we're probably good. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to, not thanks to my shoelace over here, but thank you for helping us. And yeah. We're gonna have some models to take photographs of with my designs, have them, throw around the skirts because there's lots of long, drapey chiffon that we're gonna be able to play with, all kinds of cool stuff. So thanks for coming and thank you for listening.